So we're talking about the collapse of the duality of um, in here out there. So then we spoke about, we're talking about what is there. So we spoke about Rigpa, or the unborn face, or the unborn, or the original face, which I think we can call awareness, and that all of our sounds and sights and smells and all of our sense data, really, in a way, if you think about it, the metaphor I like to use is that where awareness is kind of like a mirror, and all these phenomena are reflected on it, and that's what constitutes our experience. So it's really what I think what they mean by enlightenment is, it's resting in that awareness naturally, because of what we've been talking about. When we rest in awareness, that is, quote unquote, a non-dual experience. It requires that the subject and object collapses. And I would say that when you sit down in meditation and you get into a very concentrated state, which I think they call samadhi, which really just means total engrossment and concentration on one thing. When you're in that state for long enough, and then you get you forget about the body, first of all, which is apparently what happens. I guess it's kind of happened to me before, but not to the same extent that they talk about. And you just become that awareness that everything is reflected on in that state. And that's in the Buddhist way, that's what they describe as an awakening experience, like a proper one. That's what they say that is. And what I would consider enlightenment to be, or what they call fully cooked, is that you can be in that place all the time, like all the time. You've stabilized that state of mind. So for me, I've got a mix of things. I've got a mix of a continuous self. I've got a mix of moments where I glimpse, something non-dual. I've got a whole mishmash of different things that happen. And then in the meditation itself, I sometimes get in very deep states of concentration, sometimes for extended periods. Other times I can't even count beyond one before I have to keep, like, I'm basically just going one, because everything's so chaotic. So like I've tasted, I think, what that must be like to some degree. So particularly with the non-dual kind of awakening or glimpse that people talk about. And I believe that it's possible to have some residue or a less intense version of that. But the fully intense experiences, like the really hardcore awakenings that people get, and then they tend to snap out of it fairly quickly. My theory is that someone like the Buddha, if you want to believe that story, was just in that all the time. He no longer identified probably in any way with the self as we're talking about it, and he basically rested in that awareness all the time and never came out of it. He was just always there. That's what I think it is. So he was fully cooked. And you think about Tibetan practitioners, particularly. So I studied Dzogchen for a while, which is, it takes the opposite approach. So a lot of these meditation styles, they sit you down, and then you're in here and you're concentrating, and say if you're counting, like that's what I promote, or you're doing concentrating on something else, whatever it is. like the Satipatthana and Vipassana, they concentrate on sensations. So you instantly have a subject-object thing going on. But in Dzogchen, they do the opposite thing. So they have pointing instructions, and then they try to induce the awakening experience. So then you understand what non-duality is. But then you have to go for 30 or 40 years meditating normally to stabilize it. They say what is called stabilizing the non-duality. So it's funny that these traditions have kind of approached it kind of back to front, or they did compared to the normal traditional styles of meditation.
That sounds similar to some of the Vedanta, like, they say like it's abiding non-dual awareness. So you can have like the glimpse of non-dual awareness, but
which is what we all have. I think that's what we've had. That's what I've had. I wouldn't call it much else than a glimpse. I've had, periods where it's been like that for a while, and I'd say it's changed the way I see things. Like
it has at some point
all these other effects.
But at some point for you, then the general structure of how you view the subject object and all that stuff, the actual has there been a point where the structure changed in some way? It may not have been a huge, like, big drastic event, but it definitely changed in some way and then remained changed.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So like
it did. Yeah.
So that I've had various gradients of that, but there was like two big ones of those. There was like the flip, which was associated with loads of like crazy experiences at the same time, which I'd had all the energetic and Kundalini stuff and that for years before this. So I'm not confusing the two things. That stuff was going on, and it was still just me, normal me, having weird experiences, peak experiences. Then I had it flipped. There was all this crazy stuff going on for about 2 years, energetic and mystical visions and all stuff like that, along with as it was kind of deepening or maturing. And then that all kind of dropped away and it just became clean. And then I had another one that just flipped again, but it was just more of the same. It was like even less of me on the inside and more just out. The sensations are more happening where they are. So like I'm looking at a window just now. The window's there. It's not me in here looking at the window. It's hard to say. It's just not the same thing anymore. It wasn't like that before. That has maintained for a long time. For the first couple of weeks after it happened, I was worried about losing the flip. I was worried about flipping back. So I was scared to think about things. I was scared to think about me on the inside in case I flipped back in, because I've much preferred it to be outside. It's like a spatial thing for me. It's hard to explain. I played a sort of, then I realized it wasn't flipping back, and then I was playing a game of trying to get the old me of the little tight me inside my head. I'm in here. I tried to get him back as a joke, and then I tried to hold on to it, and then it just disappears. So like I have to actively do that now, whereas before that's what was happening reactively by itself. So that structure just flipped and changed, never went back. And then last few years, it's been kind of the second one is just kind of a deepening. There hasn't been like a big kind of big shift. It's just kind of more deepened and a slightly better intellectual understanding conceptually of what's going on. But I wouldn't say, and it's hard to remember what it was like before, but it doesn't feel like a completed point. Definitely not. But it also is definitely not a beginning point. It's like for sure. It's like an intermediate, let's say, but I don't know where the fuck in the middle it is. Doesn't really matter. It doesn't bother me. For a while it did. I was like, what am I going to do? This is like, I should do something. Like you're trying to do something, but that's the old you, the old fake self thinking it has to do something. You don't have to do anything. It's just like, it doesn't matter. You're going to do what you're going to do, but it's a different you doing it. Or it's a different field of awareness, or however you describe it. But yeah, I've heard of some people saying they had like really massive events when it happened. The first one for me, I didn't even. I had like I've told on one of our first podcasts about the white light, the vision of the white light, and then disappearing into the light, and then reappearing. To me, I just thought that was like a mystical, weird experience thing. It was only over that year I realized, actually, sounds totally different about my structure of awareness. It just never went back. but there was lots of other crazy things going on in my life. My life was just a total shambles around then. It's not like this is not like do things to make yourself feel good. This stuff, you can really like mess up your life in a normal sense while you're working on this stuff. And now it's like way more normal and better. And I would never ever take that. I would never choose to take all that back with no amount of money or lifestyle. This is just better. I would rather be sitting on a beach staring at the sea with no money than the opposite, having all the money and but being a little reactive self, and you never want to go back to that.
Yeah, no, totally. It's when you think about like people will be like, oh, the Rothschilds are fucking in control, like Bill Gates he's in control, like fuck man. I don't know Bill Gates, maybe he meditates too, but I don't think he does from what I know. And he's just as much of a victim of this as anyone else.
Yeah.
All these people are victims. Joe Biden's a victim. Fucking everyone is a victim. They're just doing what they're fucking designed to do. And I agree. I wouldn't take it back for anything because I remember what it was like to be that way. It was fucking shit. Absolutely shit. I'd rather face a wall for 10 hours a day for a week and fucking go back to that.
I mean, to give someone like an example of how your life is more pleasurable or just enjoyable without doing anything about it, is that I used to really, if something bothered me or upset me, I would stew on it for ages, I would like stew on the bad feelings for like a couple of weeks, then it would explode, and obviously I would be so far away now from the original feelings and the drama that I was thought it was other. You have justifications why you're annoyed now. Because you don't want to. It's not the thing from 2 weeks ago. So I used to be like that, and then when after doing this, the meditation and various other stuff, is whenever I had a bad feeling, they still appear. It's not like this fantasy where you do meditation, you become enlightened, and you have no bad negative feelings. You don't have as many negative feelings, but they appear and then they just go away of their own accord. They just like rise and fall themselves, like everything else. They don't like.
You don't react to them, right?
Yeah, because you're not. That's they don't stick around because what they used to stick around because you were doing this whole set of little quick reactions that kept them there and grew them and do them. But it doesn't happen now. They just appear. Of course, they're going to appear because it's the structure of the human brain. Situations happen that trigger this is going to happen, and some of them are useful, some of them are enjoyable, some of them aren't. Doesn't matter. They just appear and go away, and you don't make a big deal about them, and they just literally just fall away. And that was like for a while I was playing the game of trying to hold a negative feeling, and it would just try to hold on, and it'd get like 3 or 4 seconds, and it would just drop away. It was like it's a way. It really felt like you try to hold something on in a fast flowing river, and it just gets thrown away. It just you're holding on to it for a few seconds, and you just have to let it go, and it's off. It was really like that flow, that metaphor of like a flowing river really made sense to me in terms of the holding on to emotions. So what people are doing with reactions is they're like really tensing up and holding on to this thing, and then you realize one day this is just a piece of fucking rubbish. Let it go.
Yeah.
What are you holding on to? It's not a dinghy to say. It's not a life fucking. It's not a life. What do you call those rings? You're the surfer. Those fucking things they throw in the water when people are drowning.
It's not one of them. I take that out with me when I go. Yeah. You mean
so
like
I just had a reaction just now. My reaction just now was an image of David Hasselhoff. So that just like happened. It just happened to me. I didn't just appear. I didn't just make that.
I'm more like David Hasselhoff when he was drunk eating a hamburger at his front door that time. I don't know if you saw that video.
I saw that.
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree with all of that. It's not for me anyway. It's not perfect. So I still have my moments. It's hard. It's not easy to maintain this stuff. It's difficult, particularly.
Yeah, you don't become this perfect, moral, well-behaved being. You could ask my lady, and she would just say, "This is just he's talking shit. He's a total retard." You're still like that kind of thing is going on. I mean, people will notice that you're a bit different, or they'll think maybe say things like you're more chilled out, or you're not as many temper tantrums, or whatever your thing is, or they maybe notice that you don't drink as much as you used to, or whatever it is. Even that doesn't mean anything. You can still drink. It's like, for an enlightened person doesn't drink alcohol. Yeah, right. It's just like people have, or doesn't eat meat, and all these fantasies that people have about what
the
it
Buddha.
means.
The Buddha ate meat. He ate.
Yeah,
He ate
exactly.
meat.
It's total like the whole religion grew up after this guy who had some techniques that were interesting and transcended the humanimal condition that everyone else is in. I mean, I read somewhere that you would know more, but that he was doing the other kind of meditations and stuff that were around at the time. So he was like a master of those ones, but where you were just getting in trance state, bliss state. And he was still just noticed it was still just him. I don't know what the wording is, but the basic idea is nothing's really changing. You're just bliss states. So then he was looking at the impermanence of the bliss state, and then looking at the impermanence of the bliss state made him realize how he became enlightened under the tree, or something like this.
I've been thinking about this actually. Yeah, I've got thoughts on it.
But like that's where everybody's caught up. They chase the bliss states. Yeah, it's like a drug. They're like, they get into these things for the bliss states. They can spend decades sitting, feeling great, getting into the state and all that. But it's just they haven't changed the structure of the subject object thing or anything like that. And it's just an addiction.
No, it's the same
just
thing.
Addicted.
Yeah, it is.
It's just like chasing drugs. I mean, I was like totally addicted to like Kundalini type experiences, like the energetic experiences for a few years. I was just chasing those all the time, and then I realized that it was just a trap. It's like it's the side effect of the real change. So like you're doing the work, the meditation work and stuff like that, and things are changing. You might, some people, not everyone, but has the energetic experiences with it. And if they're a side effect of doing the work and changing the structure of your consciousness. But then you're the human who wants the good feelings, and you chase after more of those experiences, thinking the experience is the goal, but it isn't. It's you go off on a tangent. Then you can do that for years. Some people do it their whole life, but it really is functionally. It's no different from addicted to food or addicted to drugs, or you're just chasing a high. Literally, just chasing a high.
Yeah.
And this is why a lot of the teachers say not to ignore it. I mean, the Zen guys are good at that. You just ignore everything, just get up and sit, crack over the head.
Yeah.
So like, that's what they're stopping those. They're stopping those people. I mean, when Westerners go over in there, they must roll their eyes, I suppose, because they're like everyone's chasing the big dream, some big thing, and they're like crack, which makes sense, for certain people. I don't know what it was like in around the Buddhist time though.
Yeah, I think they were more hardcore, probably. Like so the way I look at him is, so yeah, you're right. He did do that kind of thing, but also what he probably did more of were the self-denial exercises. So the ones where you basically starve yourself almost to death, and try to meditate on nothingness. So everything was black, and that kind of strain of annihilationism, it was called. So I think that basically what he realized was, as you say, those things of self-denial, and they are in and of themselves driven by, I'm just trying to think of the best way to say this, driven by a reactivity to life, a larger scale of reactivity, but a reactivity of hatred of life, and therefore self-denial, and just trying to get out, trying to react to get out of it. And I think that's why he developed the middle way, which was not complete self-denial. It wasn't anything except just a calm, abiding acknowledgement of reaction, which, as far as I know, although you don't know where the Buddha got it from, maybe he grifted off someone else. I mean, it's possible, that that, you know, he's like, that doesn't work. The bliss thing doesn't work because they're both driven by desires, like a desire to escape or a desire for pleasure, whatever it is. And that those things are driven by a kind of reactivity or a dis-ease with life as it is. And kind of the middle way, so the way of calm abiding or seated meditation, eating enough food, drinking enough water, not starving yourself, is kind of like in between those two things, or would have been at the time. So that's my take on it.
Yeah,
But
well, I
he,
used to. Sorry.
no, I forget what I was going to say next. Anyway, so yeah, continue. Yeah.
For a while, I used to wonder if the kind of desire for transcendence is just another reaction. Your escapism, basically. So like
Yeah, I
you're
think
not
it
happy with
is.
your life,
Yeah.
so for like a lot of people are, it's like you get into mysticism or whatever because you're trying to escape the real life. But
100%. 100%.
um,
Yeah.
but there's also another. There's like that's the kind of you're kind of being pushed to it. It's like another reaction. But there's also like or maybe it develops later. I don't know that the desire for transcendence is more like you're pulled towards it. It's more like you're being pulled. I mean, an analogy here, you're being pulled from the future rather than where reactions are being like pushed from behind from the past. Reactions are just pushing you in certain ways mechanically or, deterministically. Whereas this sort of general desire for transcendence. But I mean, originally, I think it's much more, you're just unhappy with things and you want to get away from it. I think that's the kind of
Yeah.
basic dirty, the dirty truth of it. And then by doing practices and you start to make some kind of progress, whatever that means, it becomes kind of cleaner and more pure, and it's more like you're being pulled towards that now. But I think it probably has to start in the filth. You have to like want to get out of the filth, or you just wouldn't do anything. Why would you do any of these practices if you're happy? Why? I mean, the Buddha was clearly unhappy with this. He had everything, he's the prince and power and all that stuff, and that was not enough. So it's in one sense there must be some kind of human function for this desire for transcendence, but also it could just be a brain mutation, accident. The whole thing could just be a pleasant error. Who knows?
Could be the wild card, the evolutionary wild card. And if you think about what these technologies have led to, who knows? They might come in handy for survival one day. I think they do. I think they're developing for a reason. Nothing lasts unless it works, right? In some way. So yeah, I'm, in some general sense, I know I always say that I'm black pilled, but I am actually long term, fairly white pilled about things. And I think these technologies are a representation of something happening on some level. But yeah, he was definitely unhappy. And I think that, there's a degree of mutation maybe, or maybe a better way to put it is a special kind of sensitivity or a special kind of intelligence that leads you to go, there's something not quite right. Like it just doesn't feel right. Like it feels dreamlike, or and you notice something like that. That's maybe it's that feature. Although sometimes, as you say, it's not. Some people are just trying to escape. That's where you get most spiritual types and people in the occult who go from system to system because they're not really interested in what's happening. They're more interested in the special words and exotic concepts and differentiating themselves in some special way. I just wanted to say, because I'm kind of losing my voice, but what I wanted to talk about quickly was pleasure. So, and maybe we can actually talk about some physiological things that happened to me during this as well, which I think will be interesting to people. just quickly, and then we have some questions which are related to this that we can go through quickly too. So the first thing was you were talking about pleasure, how you have to ignore pleasure. So on about day 3, I like, I can't describe to people how weird meditation is. Like these things, it's really strange. Like you look at Buddhism and like, oh, I just want to meditate and feel a bit peaceful, but it takes on like psychedelic proportions. Like it gets fucking strange, and it was probably maybe fairly early in the morning, and I had been doing some breathing work on the side, so you don't get to sleep much. You get about 5 hours sleep. You wake up at 4:30. You do 2 45-minute sessions. You do. I did some yoga after that. Then you have breakfast, clean up. You do another 4 sessions, 45-minute blocks with 15 minutes of walking meditation, separating them. And then you do another 4 in the afternoon, separated with walking meditations, and then 2 at nighttime. So effectively, you're doing, 10 hours or more every night. You finish at about 10 o'clock, and then basically you do some breathing, go to sleep, get up at 4:30 in the morning, and it all starts all over again. And that's conducive to putting you in some fucking very odd states of mind. And probably on about day, it would have been day 3. Yeah, day 3 in the morning. I did the first meditation, which was very difficult, and then the second meditation. I don't know what happened, but something switched in my head, and I got in, I guess, what you describe as a bliss. I fucking hate that fucking word, but something like, it felt really fucking good, and everything was pretty amazing, and this feeling was just welling up, like it was quite powerful. Even to the point where I was doing the walking meditation, and it felt like I was in one place and the world was moving, and just weird perceptual shifts like this were happening. And it felt so fucking good. So I'm sitting there and I know intellectually that I'm meant to, it's like, just ignore it, just continue with the counting, everything is good. So I've got this thing in my mind where I'm trying to focus on my method, but at the same time, this feeling is just fucking overwhelming, and you just want to give into it. You just want it to keep going, and you want to just get into it. And yeah, anxiety and fear and all these things are one thing, but they're actually relatively easy to try and ignore because they feel like shit. So you don't really want to fucking hang on to them. But when you have something pleasurable, it is the most challenging to be equanimous in the face of something pleasurable. Really difficult. But yeah, eventually, of course, like all things, it went away, and you're left there going, fuck, that was, I like that. I wanted to come back, man. I like that. But yeah, I just thought I'd mention that because, funnily enough, that did happen to me. Another thing that happened to me was something to do with the hatha breathing that I talk about, which I've been practicing for a long time, including lots of like ancient special exercises that I've been doing and testing out for a little while now. And I had this experience that I've never had as long as I've been doing this work. Obviously, breathing into the belly is an important part of sitting meditation. So not deliberately, you want it to happen, but you don't force it to happen. And I was sitting there, and it was at nighttime. And you know how you do the gag reflex in the Hyatt work to try and loosen up tension in that region?
Mm-hmm.
Well, what happened was, just out of the very bottom, so just above my pelvis, I think that's probably where it originated from. There was this wave, like I don't know how you describe, like a physical muscular wave feeling, a bit like literally like a wave going over the ocean surface, and it just slowly went up, and it was very similar to the gag reflex, like the actual reflex action, but the rest of my body was completely still, and it went all the way up quite slowly, so it wasn't fast, very very methodically and very stable. Didn't go up down or jabber. It was just, it went up 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 all the way up into my throat, and then it kind of finished, I guess, underneath my chin. And what happened was my, I don't fucking describe this. It sounds mental, but my rib cage like just got depressed or pushed down. And bear in mind, I'm sitting up straight, so I didn't slouch down. I was up straight, and there was this pressure in my belly. It just pushed my belly out, and the bottoms of my rib cage, which have a tendency to flare out, just collapsed, and they collapsed below. It was almost like the diaphragm had shifted up and the rib cage went underneath or something like that. That's the best way I can describe it. And my belly before was quite relaxed, fairly relaxed, but what had happened was it had just expanded and it stayed there. And everything was happening automatic. I wasn't trying to breathe into it. It just happened. And my belly stayed distended. It stayed out. There was no me holding it out. It just stayed out. And the low abdominal breathing was going right down automatically, but the abdominal wall was staying distended. It was just staying out. And I could just feel the breath being sucked right down. This is all automatically. And the belly stayed out. There was like this constant pressure. And I remember when I was researching that short book that I did, there was this case study of a Japanese flute player. And what they say is when they play the flute, the best way you can be is to have your belly distended without forcing it and breathing into the gut rhythmically, slowly. And that's how they play, with a distended belly, breathing into the abdominal muscles. They do that with archery. They do that with all these different things. And it's something that, at least traditionally, these people learn what to do in Japan. And it was like, after all this time, I finally fucking understand what hara belly it actually is. So not just breathing in there, but there was a structural shift in the way that my abdominals were interacting with my diaphragm and my rib cage. The rib cage was completely without motion. It just sat there. I wasn't forcing it to do that either. None of this was forced. It just kind of happened. And I was like that basically for a few days, after I got home. It was still like that. It kind of still is now, but it feels like it's a little bit different. Which was crazy. And during it, so it had been like this, and it stayed like that for the rest of the retreat. What happens is, when you're like that, you can feel the heartbeat with these big, deep, slow abdominal breaths, and the belly sticking out like that with pressure, not pressure you're putting on, it's just out. And you can feel your heartbeat in your abdominal region stronger than you can feel the heart in your chest. So it just feels like do-dung, do-dung, do-dung. And you can just feel it, like your belly gets warm and it feels like there's just blood in there, and you can feel the heartbeat. And it reminded me of the book that first kind of got me interested, which is the title of the book is Hara, the Abdominal Heart. And after all these years of looking into it, I think I finally fucking figured out what they're talking about.
Oh, nice.
So that happened during meditation as well. So that was a revelation, because now I'm like, fuck, now I finally fucking understand what they're talking about.
So they'd actually named the book.
Flute players.
It wasn't like a fancy name. It wasn't like a fancy Western modern name for a book that doesn't really mean anything. They were actually just describing the empirical
describing it.
experience of the result of that
Abdominal
system.
heart. Yeah, that's what it
Very
was,
nice.
and it was such a comforting, warming, relaxing feeling. It really was impeccable. It was an impeccable state to be in.
So it's not just so you got into the situation where the breathing happened and then you recognized, oh, this is what they're talking about, but also because you
Yeah,
were doing the meditation and fighting against your reactivity or working against your reactivity, uh, that kind of created space for you in order to be able to be in this situation where you that, not only for that to happen physiologically, but for you to be able to recognize it. You
yeah,
know, it
yeah. I
kind of
guess so. Yeah,
made space for it because if you weren't on the retreat and doing that, then you may not have been clear like a clear enough observer to see what was happening and to recognize it.
yeah, yeah. I think you're right.
And
Yeah, I
also,
think
and at the same time,
sometimes
it's conceptual as well
you
because
really need
it's
a lot of time. Yeah,
it's like it's a very psychophysical experience because you're not just there's the
mm,
physiology, there's the quote, physical mechanics of the body parts working in a different way. There's your your feeling of it, the experience of it. There's your conceptual your conceptual aha moment. Oh, that's this thing they're talking about. That's fitting all those things together. There's a whole like out of awareness constellation of things has just refigured themselves and transformed and transcended itself into like a new understanding and a new experience at the same time.
yeah,
And
yeah.
all of that must have been growing and building and developing under the surface for a while. And then you had to go through all the suffering and the pain and the discomfort and all those things, and then the bliss and then pain and then missing the bliss and overcoming things in order to set the scene for that to happen. You can't just sit down and you did sit down. You can't just decide for these things to happen. You have to actually have done the practice, and it's like
Yeah.
you don't make it happen. You just what you can make happen is you can make yourself create the conditions for which things like this can happen in. But you don't know in advance. If you try and usually if you try and have an idea of what it's going to be like, the success, the goal at the end, you'll fuck it up or you'll prevent yourself getting the goals. You have to find some way to be
Totally.
open ended while
Yeah.
it's tricky. You have
Yeah.
to have some
As
kind of goal in mind or you won't do it. There has to be something driving you to do it. But also, if you're too specific, you can't you block it off. You block off the thing happening, and usually the big ahas and the transcending. Well, always a moment of transcendence is always different than you expect by definition. It can't be what you expected, or it's not transcendent. Because you've imagined it in advance. If you imagine it in advance, it's from old experiences. Can't be the new thing.
Yeah.
It has to be different in some way. And all the main events that's ever happened to me have been like that, where you're like, holy shit, like it's a surprise. An aha moment.
Sorry, you're cutting out there. You there? Hello?
Yeah, I'm just saying that all the things, the big events that have happened to me, all of them, there was like an aha moment. It was like a shock or a surprise or something. It wasn't like something I was expecting, and it's always better than the best thing you had in mind. It's always better. Well, usually.
Yeah. It was different. What they always tell you in Zen, what my Zen master tells me is the best advice he can give anyone is just stick to the method and nothing else. That's really hard, but it's the same thing with the body work, the posture work as well. You want to fantasize, you want to do all these things, you want to think about something else, you want to think about what it's going to be like. But all you need to do, and particularly with Zen, is probably quite an extreme distillation of this view, is just stick to the method, like no matter what happens.
Yeah, because like in Zen, they really strip away all the fluff and all that, and it's all just like down to the basic method, and it's ignore all that weird shit, and they kind of laugh at it or whatever. And that seems like on the surface that's totally opposite to there'll be some other tradition where there's like hundreds of concepts and there's all these beings and you interact in this way and there's all these rituals you do and there's like loads of there's like tons and tons of colors and fireworks and all these things to do. It seems like they're complete opposites, but actually, some of them are for different types of people. So, like the Zen is they strip it down and force you to ignore all the other stuff, ignore all the fluff, and stick to the method. Whereas the other one, with all the bells and whistles, sometimes literally bells and whistles, is it distracts all that shit it takes up all the person who has all the needs for all that stuff. They need the fluff, they need the symbols and all that stuff and it's all presented to them there to just to use up all to distract all that parts of them, or to keep that parts busy. Where in that way, it can create a space for the awakening or the new consciousness to sort of appear. And they're like kind of disciplining those things, and it's harder to do. I mean, like it doesn't appeal to me, that stuff, but for some people, they kind of need it.
Yeah. I'm less. I used to be. I used to maybe think that way, but I'm less inclined now. I put it this way. For most of us, so I'm considering us, white dudes, pretty much. I don't think anyone else listens to this. So if you're not like a Tibetan or a, whatever, I really believe the simplicity of this, the really confrontational, efficient nature is very beneficial, because I think with the more exotic things, there's a very real possibility that you can end up wasting years and years hypnotizing yourself and not really just getting to the crux of the matter. I feel like the Zen tradition, at least the Soto Zen tradition, and there are some other traditions that do lack that sort of thing. They've just gotten to the point. They've gone, yeah, look, all the other stuff, it looks fluffy or whatever, but it's a load of shit. If you wanna learn about this, you've just got to sit down and face it. I feel like the fluff is a way of getting out of it.
Yeah, it's definitely the way people. It's definitely the way people use it, and I don't think it's right for guys like us. No, and
no,
there's like an element of their, like the teachers and the traditions and that there's an element of they're just trying to keep people busy, so to avoid the distractions and stuff. So the Zen is just sit down, stick over the head, whatever. That's keeping you busy, quote. Whereas the other ones are giving all this stuff, and they're like kind of gives the person what they think they're after, and then they kind of sneak in the other stuff or whatever. But yeah, people are so distracted and have so many concepts and things going around now. Another bunch of them from a different culture is not useful to most people.
Yeah,
they're better.
And as I was saying in that article, that is distraction. So going around from systems and having all this different shit, like that is the problem in the world right now. That's too much fucking information, and it's the same with spiritual systems. Whereas Zen, at least in its essence, I mean, they do have, some schools have more flowery fucking shit, but it's like, yeah, just fucking sit down, fucking stay still, and abdominal breathe, and that's all you do. You don't do anything else. And I just can't see what else there is to do. When I think about, like, yeah, okay, maybe you can meditate on a Tibetan deity, or but you're still doing that. You're still doing the same thing. You're still just meditating on an object, and that could be a deity, or it could just be counting numbers. There's no difference.
I mean, I see how
so you might as well just throw it away and count. You know what I mean?
I see how some of the techniques I see how some of them could take a person closer to like overcoming the false self, the no self. Like, for example, I think in the Tibetan one they have, you meditate on a deity image or whatever, and then you become that, you identify with that for a while or whatever, and then you overcome that identification. So you're kind of training yourself to stop identifying with these. You like kind of get away. It's like a trick to get away from your current identifying with your false self. So you identify with this deity or image of a deity or however you want to think of it. and then you let go of that one. So then by doing this over a period of time, you're easier to let go of your own one. I think for maybe originally there were tricks like this,
Yeah.
but the problem is, especially for a Westerner, people just go and find the one that they like. You know, and the one that you like might be by far the one you don't need, by far the one you need least, because you like the one that's closest to how you already are. You know, that makes you happy, that gives you the thrills, makes you feel superior, makes you feel part of a club. You know, whatever
Those
it is.
pictures are cool too. The deity pictures are cool. So you're like, wow.
There's that too, yeah.
Look at that.
But I mean, even
that's awesome.
you look at the medieval Christian tradition, they did the same thing. They the serious ones, the monks, they just like they get away from all the crazy, you know, they keep them busy. They're singing psalms for hours every day, and then the rest of the time they're silent and they're doing their contemplations, whatever. Like uh, it's all just tricks for putting you into getting you away from your old reactions and creating a space for the new awareness to build up or to unfold or to however develop, however you want to say.
There was probably an element as well, just with there's a cultural element. So probably when they were bringing, and sounds like I'm being mean to the Tibetans, but I love Tibet. I've been there before. I like Tibetan people, but it kind of sounds as if it's like we're going to bring Buddhism into Tibet. They've got an animist, shamanistic religion. So what's the best way we can package up this essential teaching for this culture of people? So let's take some of their deities and various other things, and let's synthesize a Buddhist system that has what we're trying to get at, but also respects their nativist inclinations and their cultural habits or various other things. But then I think that's cool for Tibetans. That's cool for Tibetans. I don't know. And again, I'm generalizing because not all Tibetan schools are like that at all. The tantric ones are. Dzogchen's not like that. Mahamudra's not like that. There are schools in Tibet that are purely philosophical. So I'm not being mean to Tibetans. I'm just choosing theirs because some elements are very exotic. But I think that at least for Zen is just, it's like Buddhism for export to the West. It's perfect. Like it's perfect. It's got none of that baggage or exotic hang up. And it's very easy to be analytical with it, which suits our minds. We have minds like that. We can't help it. And yeah, it's just stripped down. It's like this, like you don't need anything. You just have to sit there, shut the fuck up. That's it. And I just think it's so elegant. I love it. And I guess you could say the same for some elements of Vipassana as well. But even it's a bit autistic. I was reading a
Vipassana attracts the Western autist for definite. The techno techno utopian types. All those ones love
levels of achievement and shit.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about that. So let's do the question.
Gamification of enlightenment. That's what it is.
Yeah.
What they call the maps, I forget what they call it. The stages of insight and that kind of thing.
Stages, yeah. Jana,
which is
Janus.
Yeah, but there's also the insight stages. They call I think some of them call those Janas as well, don't they? There's like other type of Jana.
Yeah.
Fucking confusing. But yeah,
so you got Jana.
So you got
yeah. The systematizer, the left brain systematizer.
The guys who they think they think
like a video game, man.
They could figure it out. Yeah, they think it's figure outable in a way that it isn't.
Yeah.
But they do clarify and pull out some good stuff for techniques and stuff for less.
And just to say, we're generalizing here, aren't we? Like we're not like having a go. It's just a very general criticism or whatever. I'm sure within these schools, they're not all like that. So we'll just go on the question because that's what the question's about. Funnily enough. So where are we? Let me just find it. So this is from our Kiwi friend Munro online, man. So he had a couple of questions, eh? Let's have a look here, bro. Cuz. Hey, hey,
good.
bro. Sorry, Munro. I think Munro thinks I'm always mean to him, which is kind of true. But I don't mean it. I only do it because I like him. He's a Kiwi. What does he fucking expect? Be nice to him? Okay. All right, here we go. So this ties into what you were saying. Can you both please share your thoughts on the jhanas? Maybe share some personal experiences when entering into any of these states. So let's go through the jhanas just quickly, because I mean, off the top of your head, you probably don't know, and I didn't know off the top of my head either. So I just downloaded them quickly. So you have jhanas. So there's 4 of them from what I can see here. And it's complicated, so I'm not going to go into every single element. But each jhana has hindrances that are effectively abandoned, and then something you acquire. So yeah, it is like it's like playing Zelda or something like that. But the first jhana is basically you lose sloth and torpor, you lose doubt, you lose ill will and aversion, restlessness, greed, and sensual desire. And the things that you pick up are applied thought, sustained thought, rapture, happiness, one-pointedness of mind, which is, I guess, what I was talking about in terms of samadhi.
So, what are they talking? Is this because, like, I've heard jhanas used in different ways, and it just in general, people are always confusing together the states and experiences that you can get into with separate stages of development in terms of the awakening enlightenment. So which one are they talking about here? It sounds like they're not talking about states or experiences. It sounds like they're talking about actual changes in the person's awareness. Is that what they mean? Or are they talking about states?
So yeah, the document here refers to things that happen, not so there are states. The thing I have in front of me doesn't refer to them. Although I can find something with that. Jana breakdown.
So for like I've been in lots of if it's talking about the states, I've been in lots of because he asked for personal examples. I've been in many of those states at different times, but I wasn't working under the model, that model. So I wasn't calling them using that word. I wasn't thinking of it like that. They were just kind of happening to me when I was doing different meditations and things. And I was jumping between different ones. And I just thought some of them were bliss states, some of them were weird visionary states, some of them were, the most extreme ones I said earlier about the white light and disappearing. I have no idea which genres they would all go into, but most of those things didn't really change me after. Some of them did. So it was more than just the state. It was like some development that happened and the bliss state came along with it. So my understanding of all this stuff very messy, and I would get the terminology wrong. And
me too. Yeah.
I would alternate between sounding like I don't know what I'm talking about and sounding like I think I know all of it. Because I would just be saying it based on my own experience, and I wasn't I wasn't communicating with other people who were doing that stuff. I only read about this stuff after and started backdating, back with hindsight. I was thinking, oh, that's that what they're talking about there. Oh, those are those things I was having, and I still go into these things. Sometimes they just happen by themselves. If I lie down in a certain position long enough, I'll go in a very specific position for me. Too weird to explain here. If I'm within 10 minutes, I'm away in some state. And I was doing that for years. I didn't even realize that that was a thing that they're meditating in order to achieve, and they have names for it, and there's hindrances and all that. It was just happening to me, related to various other energetic stuff. I mean, I'm critical about the chasing after the highs and stuff, but there's nothing wrong with experiencing those things. They're good for you, probably. They're healing. You know, if you're in a bliss state for a while, it cleans up some of your shit and makes you feel better in your life, and probably helps solve depression for some people. I don't know. Never been depressed. I've been unhappy and
Yeah.
hungry many times, but I've never been like
Oh,
depressed.
depressed.
But I don't know.
Yeah, neither.
But I'd imagine being in bliss states regularly would get you out of that because you're doing something to your brain. So, and also
Yeah.
it's light at the end of the tunnel because you're now like, I don't have to feel that way. I can feel this other way.
Yeah.
So in terms of like practical stuff for the jhanas, or for bliss states, let's say, or alternative realities, some of them do get like psychedelic once you get into them. Some of them are like ones that have their like DMT descriptions, you know, without doing any of that stuff. If you wrote down the exact experience and compared it with the experiences of people who are doing the experiments on DMT with injections and all that stuff, same thing. So you don't need to take these things to get these experiences if anyone's doing that. But that won't just happen by sitting down once, you know, like there's so many factors. I don't know. I just like I've always been so lone experimentalist to these things. I've no idea where it all fits together.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, at least in Buddhism, teachers, at least in the Zen tradition, don't talk about levels because it sets up expectation, and that's a problem because you're always thinking like, have I reached the third jhana yet? Like, yeah, I've got this and I've got that, and yeah, that's just a surefire way of not being in the third jhana. But from what I can see here, and I probably should have researched this before because, like you, I don't know much about it. I've never had much to do with Theravada.
Well, I'm guessing Munro does Vipassana and the
No, I don't think he
Burmese stuff,
does.
is it? Oh,
I
okay.
don't think he does. No, I think
Well,
he.
maybe Jana's his other
Just,
stuff too. I don't.
yeah, maybe. So yeah. What I do know is yeah. So looking here, so in some ways, Zen has retained some of these. So there are levels in Zen. People have written about it. But basically, yeah, from what I can see, you've got 4 jhanas, and in each one you lose, some bad traits and you pick up good ones. Then you get into the second level, and then it shows you, say, in the second level, you achieve samadhi by the looks of things. Third jhana, the bhikkhu abides in equanimity, which is effective detachment, fully knowing, discerning awareness. And that's what the third jhana is. Abiding in bodily pleasure, one is equanimous and mindful. And then the fourth jhana is getting rid of dukkha or pain, the desire for pleasure. And that's, I guess, considered full enlightenment, pretty much. And then within that, it seems like they got like other autistic levels and fucking stuff going on. It looks quite complicated. So if he doesn't mind, I'll just go through the stages of concentration as I'm going to present them in the video thing that I'm putting up for paid subscribers, because I think it's kind of the similar thing, but I like the way Zen treats it more because it's more practical. So in terms of concentration, which and states of mind, which is what we're talking about here, really, is it probably in the Zen tradition they say there's 7 stages, I guess you could say, levels. So in stage 1 is when you just start. Your attention is fragmented, darts off everywhere. It's a load of shit. You're a retard. Level 2. So you've started with your method. Usually it's counting breaths. So your attention will often wander from your breath and your number. A number of associated thoughts will intrude. Concerns on how to count the breath. If you're counting the breath properly, you're able to sustain the count only for short stretches. However, it's starting to get better. You're starting to be able to concentrate a little bit more and be a little bit more comfortable with your sitting. Then the third level, they describe is having uninterrupted concentration. You're able to count each number in perfect succession for at least 10 minutes. At least 10 minutes. That's level 3. That's unwavering ability to concentrate. And in this state, what you tend to get is wandering, or what would you say, like scattered thoughts or little impingements on your attention. But these thoughts are generally not powerful enough anymore to make you abandon your method. So you're getting there basically. At the 4th level is basically counting breaths without any interruption. Thoughts are scattered, but just greatly reduced. Distractions, your sensory distractions in the environment are absolutely no problem. Wandering thoughts in the mind you'll get that feeling where the thought comes up and it just passes away and you've got absolutely nothing to do with it. You don't care about it. It just comes up and departs. So that's the 4th level. So you're starting to get much better. 5th level is just counting breaths. So nothing really is going on other than that. There is just that awareness. So there is an awareness of a self counting breaths. So you still have the subject object dichotomy or separation. And you're still aware that the breaths are being counted and the number is being counted. The self is still aware of these things, but your concentration is really good. It's very pure, I guess you could say. And all disturbances of body and environment have disappeared by this point. Stage 6 is when your mind is just so concentrated in the act of meditation that counting and the presence of breath and your body are completely forgotten. You just forget about them. You're in a state of samadhi, which is just complete absorption or a one-pointed mind. So your breath vanishes, your body vanishes, everything is in a single unity. So I don't know if you've ever had the feeling in meditation, maybe you have, Munro, maybe you have, Kevin, where the body kind of disappears. You don't think you're not aware of it being there anymore. Well, the state of samadhi is effectively what they're describing here for stage 6. And also during this, the boundary between the internal and the external dissolves during this experience. And I guess where you are on each of these levels, you're not like, oh, now I'm at this one. Now I'm at this one. Like, you're always going to be a mix of all these different things. It's more the emphasis, like which one are you experiencing the most? That's your level, basically, if you want to look at it this way. And then, of course, 7 is where you get fully cooked. This is in the Zen tradition. This is what they think. So body, mind, and environment have all genuinely disappeared. Time and space have blown apart. Sounds a bit like a bit of nonsense to me, but any sense of existence or non-existence have vanished. Effectively, you have what they call no mind, and this is what in the Zen tradition they describe as being enlightened, I suppose. But as I said, I think it's very rare that anyone's a pure type. I mean, even my Zen master, who has like 40 years straight of being like an autistic meditator, like just meditates all the fucking time. Like, he told me that he's kind of like a mix. Like, he's never just one thing. So he's gotten to very high levels. He's had awakening experiences, like the higher ones that they're describing here. But then some days, he might be fucking right down the bottom. So it's not that clear cut. And that's a problem I have with levels. The first thing is it makes you try to classify yourself all the time. So when you're in the act of meditation, you're always looking like, oh, I wonder which level I'm at. And then you'll get your little fucking Jana reference guide out, and you'll be sitting there trying to classify yourself. Like, I wonder if I'm Jana 3 with the elements of Jana 2. Like, first of all, you don't need that. You don't need it. But the second problem I got with it is because when you're in meditation, you know, it's just a thing you've got to avoid at all costs. It's just another thought that comes up that's going to get in the way. So the more content you have where you're thinking about what's going on, the less chance you have for any real progress. So that's my issue with the jhanas. Having said that, if I was to look at the model that I've just given you, not looking at jhanas because I don't understand it well enough, and I'm not willing to put in the 15 years of fucking study it would take to understand it clearly, I would say that typically for me these days during meditation, I can get into short states of a weak samadhi, I guess, or very strong concentration, where I do forget about my body and my breath, more or less. That's probably as far as I've gotten, and I can't abide at that point of concentration for a very long time. Probably for me, most of the time, it's at a level where I'm very much engrossed in the counting. The thoughts are very rare that they come up, and they quickly pass away. I don't get attached to them, and my counting is very much full and engaging. I'm not cheating on the counting. So I actually measured it this time around because I do like to take notes. I take a little diary with me. And this time around, I was able to go probably approximately 3 sitting periods of 45 minutes plus a walking session, counting 1 to 10 more or less uninterrupted and pretty much perfectly. There were a few starts again, but this time around that was probably the best I got to. So whatever jhana that is, I'm not totally sure. But that I like this way of looking at it because it just gives me something a bit more concrete to hold on to. But then there were other times where I couldn't even get beyond 2. So it's all mixed up. It's all messed up. So I would just say to Munro, you've got to be a little bit careful of like systems in meditation that are going to give you levels, because in reality, when you do it, it's a load of shit, and you should probably forget about it. What I recommend to people is if they read about levels, okay, cool, have a look at the level, and then just fucking throw it away. Leave it in your subconscious. It doesn't matter, and just stick to your practice and your method, because that is the most important thing. So the second question he had was, what is your experience with shunyata? Shunyata. I don't know if you know what
can
that
I
is,
say
Kevin.
something about? Can I say one thing about the levels?
Yeah,
first?
sorry, I didn't mean to move on that quickly.
One thing I think is actually useful in the Vipassana maps with the stages of insight is that the levels, if this is what we're talking about, is it's like they treat it like cycles where you cycle through them all. So like you're not. No, I don't think any person is fixed in the higher levels all the time. You know, you're talking about your teacher. You know, they had experiences, but there's some days they're just like normal human doing normal human stuff. I think that's true for everybody. I've seen various advanced meditation teachers talk about similar things. If you were to stay in the higher state all the time, you'd just be like, you'd be those guys sitting in their pads at the side of the road in India, staring into space that need fed. So I don't think that's feasible for most people because you're still a human being. But it makes sense if you think of it as you're cycling through the different stages, and maybe now and again you go into the higher stage, and you come back out of it. And you're just kind of living like that. So that's maybe another way to look at it as well. But in general, most people are just going to fixate on how to get to the next stage. We just can't help ourselves. Goal
it becomes like
machines.
a video game. Yeah, totally.
You know, it'd be maybe different for different people. Some people need something a hook to hang on to keep them doing it, so they feel like they're getting somewhere. And other people can be more open-ended, and you know, maybe there's a personality aspect of that. I don't know. But when you describe the Mahdi of the disappearance of, what did you say, the annihilation of space and time or whatever. That is what happened to me for an instant.
Yeah.
So like I had the white, everything went, white light appeared. It was like, first of all, it seemed like it was higher than me, and then I just kind of evaporated into the white light. Sort of became the white light. I know this sounds really cheesy, but became the light. Me, the little me in here, just disappeared into the light. And then as I just remember the last moment, I was trying to keep this light thing because it was amazing. And then I just disappeared and reappeared. So if that's what they mean by like I wasn't there, like I wasn't, oh, I've gone now. There was none of that. I reappeared, and where the fuck was I just now? Which in real time, normal time, is just like an instant, probably a second, less than a second. Who knows? Maybe it was longer. I don't know. But that, from in terms of my empirical experience, was the annihilation of space and time. But I didn't experience it. I just reflected back straight after. Oh, I'd gone and reappeared. Yeah. So like after that,
the most I've got is like, just quickly, is like 45 minutes feels like 5. I've had that, but I've never had like just disappeared. So you're lucky I've not had that.
Continue. And then, so like I've had a few of those, I had many of those actually. And I've had them like in dreams where I've just woken up in a dream and I was like, I just appeared out. It's like you appear out of nowhere. Very weird. And then after you're totally refreshed and you feel good and stuff, it's like a sort of reset. Your brain kind of resets. In the beginning, they were big and drastic, and the lights and all that kind of stuff. And then after that, it was just like matter of fact and really like just boring, empirical sounding, but pleasant after. Most of them seem to happen when I'm sleeping now. It's weird. But I'm not doing a lot of formal meditation. If I was sitting down doing formal hours of meditation, it would probably happen there. So if that's what they're talking about, I understand that, I think. But you couldn't possibly be in that state all the time. You wouldn't exist, literally. You would have no You would have no experience. So like you'd be deep sleep and or dead. So yeah. So I mean, I don't know. What was the next question?
What do you think sunyata is, which is the Pali word for emptiness, voidness, which I think, I could be wrong, but in Theravada Buddhism, I think it means kind of like no self. I'm pretty sure, selflessness. But in Mahayana, at least that's what I'm familiar with. So people can correct me because I'm not sure. But it means emptiness or voidness. And yeah, it's a description, I guess, of an experience that you can have where everything becomes empty, which is a point of much confusion amongst people because they get confused about it.
Yeah, I've heard it mentioned in two ways. I've heard him describing it in the way kind of similar to the way I was just talking about it, like a disappearance. I mean, I think that's what nirvana means, extinguishing, isn't it? To extinguish.
Yeah, blowing
so like if
flame,
you, that's what it was like, there was the light, literally like a candle light, and then disappear, the light out, and then reappear. And then lots of weird shit. But still, it was like, that was like this is like a fundamentally different experience than all the energetic stuff and all the other stuff. It's just something else. Anyway, so there's that. And but I've also heard people talk about emptiness in terms of it's like thing is each.
Sorry, you're cutting out there, Kevin. Just letting you know you're cutting out on
Okay,
occasion. So
I've also
yeah.
heard people say about emptiness as it's everything is empty of self. There's no like separate self. Everything is so it's not like emptiness as in like a space of nothing. It's more there's no fixed self of anything. It's just all these things happening together uh, by themselves. So it's like empty of your sensations that you think of as you are empty because there's no self there, and the sensations, other things, are just there's no objects there. They're just have an appearance. It's empty. It just disappears impermanent in a new appearance. I've heard it used in the two ways. This is probably a translation issue. I don't know. Um, I really just don't know enough about this stuff. I can map things that I've experienced to these things, but I might get them wrong and sound like a moron. I don't know.
Yeah, I think my own take on it, and I think there's a way to explain it, and there's a way to try and put across what I think the experience is. But we just bringing it back to what we've been talking about. So we have the differentiation where we have the soup of raw data, and we put it into things. We conceptualize it into things where they have the phenomena and objects have a thingness. And this is the way we always walk around. We always walk around saying, oh, there's a thing here, there's a thing there. But if you go beyond the thingness or you drop the thingness, then what do you got? You've just got blur. What I think emptiness refers to is everything without thingness, everything without, like it is the undifferentiated soup before thingness. So that's my explanation of emptiness. That's the way I would explain it. But the experience is something as well. So I've been trying, I've been thinking for a long time because I'm sure I've had experiences that I would call emptiness. And emptiness is kind of like everything is something to us. But how do you know that everything is something if there's no other everything to compare the everything that we have to? Does that make so if we
Oh boy.
assume that, yeah, so we assume that we assume that everything is there is a thing, there is meaning, there's everything going on. But how do we know what everything is if there's no other benchmark thing to compare this thing to? Then the thingness of everything just gets broken down into nothing. It's got nothing undergirding it. There's no ruler to measure it. It's just blur. It's devoid. It's void, literally, because there's no thing that you can say it's something compared to. And it's that experience. So you can have an experience that feels like that. It's kind of like when I was a kid, I used to get this feeling all the time where everything would lose. Like I'd go, whoa, like what is everything? Kind of, I don't know. Maybe you've had that feeling before. Like often it's very quick. You just have a very quick feeling where you're like everything, because you just don't know what everything is. And I've had in meditation similar experiences to that, where everything just kind of became without thingness. And that's what I would describe emptiness as. Emptiness is the lack of differentiation, but a true lack of differentiation. And I think in that state, that's what they mean by Buddhist emptiness. Of course, I think there's different views on it intellectually, but yeah, that's what I believe it is. And I think it's hard to say, but in when you're just sitting there counting and you're fully engrossed in a very deep form of concentration, and that's all there is. And you lose all concept and you lose feeling, like you're just sitting there still. Then you know what is everything at that point? What is the essence of everything? If there's no problem to solve, what is there? There's just blur. So that, I know that may sound completely incomprehensible, but that's the best way I personally can explain it. I think that's what they mean by emptiness, and I think that's what the experience is. Some people might know what I'm talking about. It's kind of like you have this flash of just everything loses its it's undergirding meaning, it's or something, and you're just not sure what anything is. Have you had that before, or am I just talking shit? You can't, like, it's so hard to describe what I mean. Like, trying to think of the best way.
No, you've made it very clear
anyway.
that sunyata translated into Australian is blur.
Yeah, blur. That's what I call it.
We have to go back to the sources and retranslate the words. So we made a good start here today.
We do. Can you imagine that?
Yeah, no, I know what you mean, because also part of the thing that is becoming the blur is now part of the blur as well, is the ideas or your sense of yourself at the same time. So it's not just other things. It becomes undifferentiated, and you're not really. It's not seen now as separate from the rest of it, and there's no fixed thingness, including there's no fixed thing that's the self. So that's where the no self thing is, and then but also the other external, what appear to be external objects, have no fixed thingness either in experience.
And even the material, and this is what I mean. So in that state itself, there's still experience, but there's nothing that tells you what experience is. It's because there's no other universe of experience to compare experience to. So it's just what the fuck? What is this? How do I even know what anything is?
Like, well, do you know what I mean? So it makes sense because
I think
as many people have noticed that that words are all just, at the end of the day, words and language, and it just comes down to metaphors at its basic level. You're explaining something in relation to, it's like this other thing, like words or metaphors.
Yeah.
Like, you're never at the actual thing. It's always explained in terms of something else. Well, what we're talking about here is the level where there is no something else to explain it in terms of. You just get to it's like the emptiness. It's almost like there's no grounding underneath all these abstractions.
That's what I mean. There's no
money
way
system.
To tell.
It's the money system is not backed. You think it's backed by this thing, and then you think it's backed by gold, and you go back and back and back, and then you realize, holy shit, there's no gold here. So the emptiness is the lack of gold in the
we're just making shit up.
That. But it somehow still works anyway.
Yeah.
For now, maybe the world will just disappear at the same time as the money system collapses. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, if Hoffman is right, then as soon as we look away, it all collapses. So go figure.
Yeah, sorry, Donald. I just looked away. It's over.
Yeah. Non-local collapse. Yeah. So there you go.
Bleh.
My brain is fried now. I'm like, fucking what? I hope what I said makes any sense, because I'm like just trying to think, like, how do you fucking say something like that? But yeah, anyway.
Well, one sign of someone who hasn't done any of these practices and had these experiences or realizations or insights, or whatever you want to call it, is that they have a very clear answer of what these things are, and they're very articulate and have specific words they use, and it's all structured very well. At the hyper far end, yes, I think people become clearer, but a lot of them decide to just not talk about it, or they can't, or so by us scrambling around and fumbling to talk about it, at least it's, for me anyway, when I hear other people do this, it demonstrates that they've had something that wasn't a thing. they've had some type of experience, and this is what it's like. It's like you're trying to grasp a mystery that will remain a mystery on some level. You're
Yeah,
trying
like
to
you're
articulate.
always-
You're trying to break apart a whole experience into parts to communicate it with another person, and then the only way for that to be a success is for it to go back to the whole again, which is beyond words. So if we're somehow getting back to the whole, then it's worth talking about.
Yeah.
But if you just go off and get stuck in the words, which many people do, obviously, and we all do to some level, and lost in the concepts, then it's not a success.
Yeah. Here's another way, just on emptiness, because I'm obsessed with it. But I agree with what you said. The more, it's like the old philosophy cliche. The more, the more I know, the less I know, kind of thing. Like, you just the more you get into this, the less clear everything is in terms of explaining things. I was talking about pain before, and when you examine pain, so if you look at pain, for us, it's like pain. Ow, that fucking hurts. It's pain. In meditation, if you examine pain, pain is a sensation. Sure, there appears to be something going on, and it has a specific character. But the more you look at it, it's like, what is it actually? What is underneath that? What is the foundation of pain to tell me that the thing is painful? And in a way that there isn't anything. Like, pain isn't anything. It has no intrinsic essence. And I think that emptiness is like that, just with everything. Is that an explanation? Does that make sense? There's nothing about pain that gives it painness.
Well, yeah,
really.
I mean, pain is interesting even in a normal sense. So, like, to relate it back to that, like the pain people feel about things, a lot of it is like imaginary. There's no like basis for it. It's spinning things in your head. Sometimes it's real and associated with the place that you think it is. Sometimes it's not there. Your mindset about the pain, you can make it worse or better. Sometimes it's very real and you can't get rid of it. So there's this very kind of fuzzy emptiness just about normal pain. It doesn't have a fixed self. Yeah. So in terms of the suffering or the unsatisfactoriness and that level of pain, this from meditating, it shows how well. I mean, I understand how the Buddha, the Hindus, and all that just had fuck it. It's all a dream. It's all an illusion. It's not real. Totally. I mean, I see where that's one legitimate way of looking at it. It's not like it's not the Western kind of thing, but it's perfectly. It's a fine way of describing what is at the basic level describing experiences, which a lot of these things start. Well, all of these real things start from, and then just just gets lost. The history of it just gets lost in the concepts and stuff. But really, it's usually you can trace it back to they're just coming up with words to describe experiences, or to point at experiences. And to distinguish different experiences. So you need different words for different experiences, so everyone knows that they're talking about the same thing. A group of guys who are doing experiments together come up with some techniques, they work, they share them. Years later, everybody's arguing about what all the concepts mean, and they have this higher level drama.
What Jana are you even in, man? Not advanced at all. But yeah, I know what you're saying. Like, yeah. It's kind of like, in Scotland, how you punch babies in the face as a pastime, and they don't know whether to cry or what. They kind of sit there and they're like, the fuck? You know what I mean? Our babies like hurt themselves or whatever, and they don't know how to react. So it's probably because, they haven't quite figured out what pain is yet. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like,
babies don't feel pain.
No, they don't. They're too drunk.
I did qualify that it's like real pain that won't go away, because obviously there's a real level of thing. I'm not like it's all imaginary in your mind, man. However, it's there's a very loose with whatever is the real thing, which by definition is kind of a fiction. If you like, I have to invent the real thing, because if you're separating the things that can be known and experiences and the phenomena from the real thing, the thing in itself, the truth, the objective reality, whatever, you're kind of having to invent that with a word, because you're defining it by the thing that you can't know. So in that sense, it's a fiction, if you know what I mean. But there's clearly something there that affects the experiences, and but there's a very loose relationship between the stream of experiences and what they think is going on, and whatever it is that's really going on, because you can just demonstrate that people are deluding themselves all the time. Very weird things, like things don't even need to be true in order for them to be useful, and they work. They can be like clearly not true and contradictory. Ideas can be like this, or just like rules of thumb and things that don't exist, like concepts that don't exist. You can use to change things in reality, or like the stream of sensations will change by using this thing that isn't real, but it works anyway. I mean, what the fuck? That tells you that there's not a clear relationship between experience and whatever the real thing going on is. So it's bound to not make sense, all this meditation and stuff. It's bound to be weird. It's bound to break things apart. And then if you're the type of person who's trying to control everything and grasp on and has to know everything, has to have it all organized, has to know in advance what it's going to be like before they do anything, you're going to find it very hard to do this, to get anywhere in this stuff, because you have to kind of have an adventurous soul and just want to see what happens next and be open to some weird new thing happening.
Yeah. And also be willing to count 1 to 10 for 10 hours a day for many days. That's
well, I mean, that itself
just the
rules
method,
out a lot of people.
It does. But I will say this: it seems boring, but depending on what state of mind you're in, it can be pretty fucking weird as well. Particularly if you're looking at everything as being empty, for example. Then 1 to 10. What is that even? What is that even? What the fuck is that? It's very interesting about meditation, isn't it? You think just how it gives you an appreciation to how fucking strange everything is. Just how really, really strange life is. And it's really strange. Really fucking strange.
Of course,
and
why,
it is
why
empty,
is there anything? Why is there something instead of nothing? Well, there isn't really something. There isn't
really something. Yeah.
So
not really.
But there's also not nothing. It doesn't make sense.
And how do I even know what anything is? Like, compared to what? So how do I even know what this is? But I think I know what it is, but I don't really know what it is. Yeah. So
if you want to bring it back to the kind of bio-individual philosophy, then all this thinking is really just a tool for biological survival on a planet, and it helps you survive. And and your brain is kind of accidental in many ways, piece of history. So you kind of shouldn't expect it to be able to get to the big truths about these things, because it's not designed to know the truth about reality.
Yeah. And what would the truth be anyway? What would it be anyway? Yeah. So there are no answers, but what there are shifts in perception that can show you more of the totality of what it is to be you. And you hear all those stories of like Zen masters when they do become enlightened, like they laugh their ass off, and they've always got a good sense of humor. They're always taking the piss. They're like nothing more in those stories than like a really serious student, just looking for the answers all the time. And the stories, they're just sitting there, just absolutely taking the mickey out of them the whole time, and putting them in these ridiculous states of mind, and then just, just going bang like that, and they just fucking make them wake up. It's good to have a good sense of humor about all this, because it is funny. Like when you do have realizations, or you think about how everything's empty and how ridiculous everything is, then it's quite funny. You should laugh at it. Yeah, a lot of people that I've done retreats with, they're very serious. So they walk around and they've got that furrowed brow that you were talking about, Kevin, which indicates to me that they know fuck all so far, having a furrowed brow, because all their energy's bound up, where they think they are. But you got to take life lightly, particularly when you pursue these things. Just don't take it all too seriously. It's not meant to make life like this big fucking torture session of trying to find answers. It's it sounds like life advice. Like I've slipped into some life advice segment. Stay safe out there, people. But no, you know what I mean? Like just fucking take it easy and shit. Just don't fucking get all fucked up over this. And just remember to go and just live a bit. And don't worry about fucking jhanas. Just practice. That's all you got to do. And if you stick to the method and practice, don't get too screwed up about it. Then maybe you too will see how empty everything is. That would be my